So this is an absolutely tragic story, but something good has come of it. Keira was just 4 years old when she died in what her mother says was a murder-suicide at the hands of her father. That was in 2020. This week, Keira's law was passed in the Senate, and going forward, it will change the way courts handle cases of domestic violence. So Keira might not be here anymore, but she still managed to change the world. Keira's mother and stepfather join us now, Jennifer KAGEN-VIATER and Philip Viator. Thank you to you both for being here. And I think, above all, thank you for your courage to keep telling this story. It can't be easy.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Jennifer, what would you like us to all know about Keira and how her life was lost?
Yeah, so Keira was an intelligent, lovely child who in many ways was a typical 4-year-old, liked to play with her friends, enjoy time outside. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, her life was very tragic. I left the situation of domestic violence in a previous marriage, and while I was able to ensure my own safety, we then sought protection for Keira via the court system. She was failed by the family court and child protection system, and ultimately was killed in a murder-suicide. So we want people to remember, not how she died, but, just what she represented, and that was light and, changing the world, helping other kids and families.
Before I ask you a little bit more about the details of Bill C-233, Jennifer, I understand that there was a really kind of completely unacceptable moment that happened while you were in court with the judge.
Yes, there were many unacceptable moments, but the one that I know I mentioned is when I tried to talk about domestic violence on the stand during our parenting trial. A judge who had a background in labor employment law and no training in domestic violence cut me off and said domestic violence is not relevant to parenting, and he's going to ignore it and essentially, put Keira into unsafe hands. Wow. Yeah.
I don't even know. I just, Aaron's shaking his head. I am too. I'm just... And then to know what happened as a result. Let me bring Philip in on this, Philip, because you were a part of all of this. What was your reaction in those moments?
When it comes to the court moments, I'm, of course, extremely disappointed. I'm a family law lawyer myself, and it's very aggravating when you're getting judges who aren't trained in the areas of domestic violence and don't understand its impact on parenting. So you feel very helpless, I think, and it's the same type of feeling I can see victims of violence going through in the family court system, where they just feel completely helpless. Their lives are in the hands of another human being who may or may not even understand what it is they're talking about, and their children's lives are in that person's hands, and it's very scary.
Jennifer, I'll bring you back in here just in terms of, you can't bring Keira back, and yet there's clearly a determination in you to make sure that her life was not lost in vain. How did you continue to fight? How did you make sure that this bill was going to happen and it was indeed passed in Senate on Tuesday?
Absolutely. In so many of these cases, the children are sadly forgotten, and change doesn't occur. And, we were screaming and shouting from the rooftops, engaging with elected officials and, speaking to the media that things need to change. And through all of this advocacy over this period of time, we have certainly so much support from Canadians from coast to coast, and change is happening. So, this bill, Keira's Law, was tabled by Liberal Member of Parliament from Lachine LaSalle, MP Dillon, and it will raise the level of education for federally appointed judges on coercive control and domestic violence. And we're starting to see similar measures being enacted provincially across the country. So there's a recognition of the failures for Keira and for many other children and victims, and a recognition that we need to be doing better to save these lives.
So can I ask, beyond Keira's Law here, and perhaps advice is not the right way to frame this, but what happens to people who find themselves in a situation like this, in a domestic violence situation where a child is involved? What kind of information, what kind of help can you give them, having gone through what you've gone through?
Absolutely. I wish there was a magic bullet at this juncture to say this is how to navigate, but the systems are still very much failing these families and these children. I'm hearing horror story after horror story where a child's being abused, and no action is being taken. So change does take time, and we feel confident this is a first step. And we're going to continue, and there needs to be much more. But I would encourage victims in this situation to reach out to their local women's shelter, to reach out to local advocates, to make sure that they're educating and informing themselves. I mean, of course, the legal system is very difficult to navigate, and Philip may have some more advice in that regard.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, now that Keira's law is passed and it's unanimous, I've now heard that term, and I've heard of that term being used in arguments in court now to raise the level of awareness for judges. And I think, as it will take time for this to really trickle down, if you can help and assist the judge in explaining why domestic violence is a thing, point to Keira's law, point to other resources. For example, the Department of Justice put out a help toolkit where they did this wonderful thing about why domestic violence is relevant to parenting, and it could be used in court, and you could find it easily on the internet. Judges are more receptive when you could show them the way, I find.
And I don't want to sound skeptical here, and I'm, I love that this bill requires that judges consider domestic violence going forward, and yet I can't help but think that there's still a little bit of an old mindset that's going to come into play here. How confident are you that this really will change the way things work going forward?
I mean, we are seeing some changes here in Ontario on the ground, which is quite good in terms of hearing better outcomes from survivors who are going into court. I absolutely agree with you. There's that older mentality, and I think slowly the culture is going to shift and change, and I think we're already starting to see that, but it is a first step, and there is much more that's needed to be done, in particular in places where there's been historically a lot of resistance.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think one of the superpowers of Keira's law is really that it brings the discourse to the public. It brings it out in the open. Now everyone knows this is a big issue, and slowly but surely we're hoping to get that culture shift, that culture change. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we continue to bring this forward in the public's mind, and the public continues to shout, which they have, because it was a unanimous vote throughout all of Canada that this needs to be done, I think we could achieve positive results.
Oh, yeah, it is. I mean, it is a step in the right direction. I think let's just end. I'd like to ask both of you how you felt when Keira's law passed in Senate on Tuesday. It's got to be a great solace. How are each of you feeling about this?
Yes, I mean, it was a really historic moment, historic for women and children. I mean, there hasn't been a bill of this nature for, really, it's a historic bill. And, so we were really, really glad to see it pass. It's exciting, and we're just so thankful to the wonderful MPs and to Senator Delfall, the sponsor of the bill, who worked so hard to see this pass so quickly.
It's a huge achievement, and obviously it took you a long time to get here, and the circumstances that helped to get here, sadly, can't be reversed. But, just congratulations, first of all, to you for having taken it this far, because this will make a difference in people's lives going forward. So I salute you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And again, like we said, it can't be easy to keep telling this story. So thank you for your courage to continue doing so. Very much appreciate both of your time today. That is Jennifer KAGEN-VIATER and Philip VIATER, mom and stepfather to Keira. Keira's law was passed in the Senate, Bill C-233. It happened on Tuesday.
It's on the books.